Welcome to the Middlemen. I'm Tom Limongello, and I'm here with Todd Sawicki. We, as middlemen, live at the intersection of media and e-commerce, and we would like for you to join us in our discussions where we turn that chaotic intersection into your comfort zone. Welcome to the Middlemen. This is an interesting and different format. This is the first time we're having a guest podcast within a podcast. I'm here with Marc Walkin. He is CMO of Qsic, and he invited the middlemen to be in the middle, listen to a really interesting discussion with the head of retail media for 7-Eleven, Mario. What's Mario's last name?
I'm going to butcher his name. Mijares?
Okay, Mario Mijares, and the premier analyst for retail media, Andrew Lipsman, was also in the podcast. We're here at Shoptalk in the podcast lounge. So we wanted to give you a little bit of intro and understand what we're about to hear. If you've listened to the middlemen so far, you've heard a lot about either tier one retailers, Walmart, Amazon, or you've heard probably even more about tier 1 to 2 grocery retailers. But what we haven't heard is a story around C-store.
Yeah, and it really is an incremental channel to the conversation. And I think it also speaks to a broader topic of how can these RMNs really differentiate themselves, right? And in store, the whole thing, because convenience, right, is less about it's less digital inventory, and it's primarily in-store driven. So it's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, what I came back with was, imagine this world where you can target Gen Z, and guess what? They also don't have their headphones on, and we can trial new products with them, and it sounded pretty magical, I have to say.
Yeah, and one of the soapboxes I've been on lately is we're talking so much about the who and the where, but we're not talking enough about the how. There's to me, minimal creativity in this business and minimal differentiation, and what the C-store channel offers is they're mostly impulse driven. That means you can't do some things, but it forces you to do other things. And it really creates this kind of incremental layer for the mix of options for brands. Very interesting.
For me, it's very exciting to hear different types of retail formats tell their story, especially now that retail media is a thing that people are waiting to hear. What is the strategy? It's not just, do you have it? It's not, the press releases used to be, that we're doing offsite or we're doing onsite. Now it's, okay, why do I need to invest in C-store? And I think you started to talk about it a little bit. It's a very in-store opportunity. You'll hear Andrew talk about how the attribution is similar to club, where attribution is 100%. Not just that they walked in the door, it's that the screens are pretty much viewable from any part of the store.
Yep. And they're ready to buy. They're impulse driven.
And that's been the challenge, has been the digital retail media has basically killed impulse.
Yes.
Online shopping with product listing ads, you're going in and you're searching keywords. You're not searching for M&Ms. You're supposed to run into those at the cash register. If C-store can prove that impulse, that alone should be enough for a brand to want to invest.
Absolutely. And we gloss over sometimes is the massive scale and massive reach of C-stores. In 7-Eleven in particular, they have 250 million transactions a month. I think Mario mentioned it's 200,000 an hour. It's unparalleled. And when when it's Gen Z without headphones, ready to make an unplanned purchase in basically 100% audible or visual environment, it's really one of the more interesting, valuable ad channels today, period. So
all right, let's give it a listen.
All right, we are here at the podcast studio at Shoptalk. And by we, by the way, me, I'm Marc. I'm head of marketing for Qsic with Matt Elsley, co-founder and CEO. Andrew Lipsman needs no introduction.
Media ads and commerce, independent analyst. Hello, good to be here.
And our retail expert extraordinaire, Mario.
Hi, Mario from 7-Eleven.
And so it's a very timely discussion, because Andrew just released a really interesting piece around C-stores and retail media, and really is now the moment in what makes C-stores quite unique relative to the broader retail media market. Maybe, Andrew, I'd kick it to you. Why is it just getting its sort of moment in the sun now?
I think in-store retail media broadly is just starting to pick up the pace, right? There's finally this awareness and an understanding amongst retailers that it's time to make this happen. Even if the ad dollars aren't here yet, but we can finally see a trajectory. C-stores, I think, have a lot of the same value proposition that I've talked about with respect to large retailers and grocers, which is scale, brand safety, great place for endemic and even non-endemic brands. Really, a lot of what brands have historically looked for out of TV, only now you get that same quality close to the point of sale. C-stores specifically, though, I think are unique in that the small format store just works better from an advertising standpoint. I think there's a lot more leverage on every individual impression because there's a greater ability to be seen, or if it's audio, that you're getting full reach within the store. So I think that assumption of reach isn't just somebody walks in the door. If it's a grocery store, they may or may not see the ad. I think the probability that anybody is exposed once they walk in the doors of a C-store is extremely high. And it's impulse. Impulse items, single serve, higher margin, like this is very important to CPG brands. And so I think that when you tend to think of large retailers first, you can easily overlook where maybe the best leverage is on a per impression basis.
That makes a lot of sense. It's the perfect format for certainly for in-store retail media. Mario, you live and breathe this every day. What would you add here?
I'd say that everybody started, or retail media really started with like really big players like Amazon and Walmart, right? And it started all with advertising on first-party properties, right? Pretty much on the websites, right? Then it moved to mass retailers, grocers, et cetera, et cetera. Convenience stores don't necessarily have very large first-party properties. But what they have, as Andrew said, is the traffic in the store. So from our point of view, retail media in the convenience store has three of the things that are magical for all the CPGs. We are the stomping grounds for Gen Z. They really don't have a warehouse club membership. I'm not going to name anybody in particular, but they just don't, right? They don't also have a big online retailer membership either, right? They shop at the convenience store. Two, as you said, these are impulse purchases, and it's a small footprint. You can influence the consumer at the point of purchase before they make a choice. Wow. And the holy grail, so the audience you want, which is very hard to get, influencing the consumer at the point of purchase, and three, full attribution, because we know exactly who was in the store, and we can tell you if it works or not. I think those three things for the people that are starting to go on that journey with 7-Eleven Gulp Media, which is a retail media play, they're seeing that as long as they're open to test new things, because this is a new frontier, they're seeing fantastic returns on their investment.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I would add, I think the fourth big one, in my opinion, certainly from a CPG standpoint, one of the areas where I think retail media is struggling a little bit beyond the sort of big three retailers is scale and reach, right? Where once you move on from your Walmarts and your Targets and those mass retailers of the world, it's hard to actually get the scale that you need that warrants the dollars and warrants even the attention from the CPGs. And 7-Eleven in particular, right? 250 million visitors monthly.
We have about 250 million visitors per month.
Yeah.
It works out to about 200,000 customers per hour without counting gas. And outside our doors, our reach is we have over 100 million registered loyalty members. If 7-Eleven were a public company, we'd be a Fortune 50.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that note, so on the data standpoint and loyalty standpoint, and this is for the group, how would we think about actioning that data and leveraging that data to improve the offering itself? How are we doing it for C-stores? And then also, how might that differ from your kind of more mass channel retailers?
You want me to jump in, or?
I think the first-party data foundation is the key to any strong retail media network. And what I think is particularly interesting, or how I might think about leveraging that data, is once somebody's in the store, there's a lot of innovation SKUs, right? This is where people try new products, new brands. Speaking of myself personally, every time I go in and grab a drink, I kind of want to try one that I've never tried before. So I think you're very impressionable there. But The benefit then with innovation SKUs is the ability to leverage that data to retarget on multiple channels after the fact and reinforce that brand and maybe try and turn somebody from a new to brand consumer into a loyal consumer. So I just think there's a lot of interesting and unique things that you can do with that. And then obviously also take it from single serve to in driving purchase of maybe a 12-pack of soda or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
So from our point of view, that's exactly right. Convenience is the natural place for new product introduction because it's a low commitment purchase. You only need to buy one. Right? The way we go to market is not only through Gulp Media. We go to market with what we call the immediate consumption ecosystem, which is we're trying to position 7-Eleven as the fastest, cheapest, easiest, less risky place to innovate. We give our vendors access to all our transactional loyalty data where they can find opportunities. We have a proprietary consumer panel called the Brain Freeze Collective, which we have over 300,000 customers that have signed up for it, all mapped to the database. We are testing something called the Lab Store. It's a store with a lot of cameras in it where we can run an experiment. The customer does not know we're running an experiment there. And then from a retail media side, we've focused on outside our 4 doors with programmatic, social, and connected TV. Inside the store, it's the screen at the pump, which you need to listen to. You need to look at it when you pay for gas. Inside the store, we believe the best media is audio because most people come into the store, jump out of their car, so they're not wearing headphones. Your ears are always on. We need to influence the consumer very quickly. So one of the things that Matt, you should jump in because it's your platform, but one of the things why we're excited about the Qsic platform is that ability to take all the things that marketers are used to doing with digital ads, A/B testing, day parting, et cetera, full attribution, and doing them in the store. Like all of our creative for all of our ads is built through AI from text to voice. That allows us to do a lot of concept testing, a lot of optimization of those ads.
But it is the right environment to get this technology to really thrive and make sense to the rest of the market because it is immediate consumption, like you pointed out. It's largely emotional-driven decision-making. We're talking to the customer through audio. Music is highly emotive, very easy to grab attention. But the structure of the ad, like we talked about earlier today, the structure of the ad really makes a difference. This is where Lucy can really come into effect of learning of what creative is working well. One of the really interesting things that we found through audio is that closer to the beginning of the ad that has the key message is like the better the performance of the ad. So like you talked about earlier today, it's not an opportunity to tell a story. It's an opportunity to get a core message at the right time, right before the purchase actually occurs. And that's where audio can do that incredibly well because we can reach anyone in the store where you don't have to look at us like that cocktail effect of like grabbing attention, deliver the message and then have a little out. And then it's incredibly powerful when you do it well. But you need the right toolkit to analyse these things, to see it in the transactional data, to play with the creative, to dial it in. And the bigger the scale, the easier these nuances are to detect, which is why, from our perspective, convenience is a very powerful network to start.
When we were starting, we had this very large energy drink company and said, okay, we want to test radio. They came in with their 30-second ad. Oh, we want to do this ad. We know this one works. Like, you know what? It's not going to work in a convenience store. It's too long. You don't have time for storytelling. No, we're sure this is going to work. With their permission, we chopped the ad. We did a shorter version. I think it was 7-8 seconds. And we had 3 sets of stores, one with a 7-second ad, one with a 30-second ad, and a control store. And by far, as you said, Matt, the 7-second ad that just close the sale, deliver the message, that worked a lot better than the other one.
The medium is the message. It's always been true. I think we always see this when there's the emergence of a new medium, that we try and take whatever was last and import it, and it doesn't work that well. You have to leverage what's unique about that medium, and in this case, the C-store is a medium. It's visual. I think people are especially receptive to engaging, eye-catching content. With video, And also, it's great for in-store audio. I think this is the perfect venue to do both, right? This is, I think, I'd love to see the data behind it, but a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario, when you layer on that effective audio messaging on top of high-impact creative, I feel like that's got to move product.
Yeah, I think that small format stores are a great use case for this, but in retail media as a whole, I think we talk so much about the who we're targeting and the where, but we really don't talk enough about the how and focus on the creative component where to your point, Mario and Andrew, the medium is the message, right? What might work in one channel is completely different in another, right? Especially because convenience is so impulse driven, so you need to accommodate the creative to be effective in that channel where it may not be somewhere else.
Can we talk about something you said before?
Sure.
Because it's actually a really important point. Convenience is a natural place for product introduction. That's really important because when some of the less sophisticated companies that we work with look at the results in convenience and they think if I invested the same amount of money on these big, large other retail media, I would get a better return on investment. It's like, maybe, but two things. One, look at the job that you're trying to do in the convenience store, right? If you make let's say that you're introducing a root beer flavored energy drink, right? You're not going to introduce it as a 20-pack at Costco or at a warehouse club. You're not going to introduce it as a 6-pack in a grocery store. You're going to introduce it in 7-Eleven. If you make that product a success, then you take it everywhere, right? So you also need to go into convenience store thinking part of the return on investment is how many of the products I introduce in the convenience store using the channel and the message and all the things we've been talking about, can I make successful? Because the payout is going to be initially at the convenience store, but the payout is your brand is going to have a much wider footprint outside of the convenience store.
It's ultimately an influencer channel, right? I mean, that really is it's a great way to set you, just because of the Gen Z component as a whole, but it's a great way to trial new product and to, yes, influence the distribution and expansion strategy, obviously well beyond the channel. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it in the context of CPG brands. They are often adherent to how brands grow, and that's based on the principles of reach, mental availability, physical availability. In my head, I'm checking the boxes on all three in this channel, and especially the new to brand component, right? It's inherently driving that new to brand that helps brands grow, and especially there's a lot of leverage on it, that you can introduce it at a small scale, but ultimately it pays off in a much bigger scale where that growth really comes from, where for a CPG brand to be able to go from 1% growth to 3% growth for your brand from year to year is huge.
Yeah, when you take several steps back and look at the macro landscape and when we see the long tail of retail media networks, a lot of them aren't catching, again, beyond those big three. And the big reason is, what is their purpose, right? How are they different for the CPG? Why would a CPG invest in one network over another? And I think what we're talking about here is we've really illustrated that, right? If you want to launch a new product, if you want to appeal to Gen Z, if you need your dollars to work extra hard, when you need to focus a lot more on conversion, right? Rather than super top of funnel and we'll see what happens when sales trickle down, that is the convenience channel's kind of reason for being, right?
It's partly that, but it's also, you need to, in reality, we all shop at warehouse clubs, we all shop at the mass merchant, we all shop at the grocery store, and we all shop at convenience stores. But the customer that is going into 7-Eleven and buying an energy drink every day is not going to the warehouse club and buying 20 packs, right? So you will never get, the energy drink company will never get that customer over there. So yes, there's a job in there for introducing new product, which is very important. But there's also, from a customer point of view, you need to focus on the mission of every single customer. And the way you sell a 20-pack of energy drinks at a warehouse club is very different from the way you sell an energy drink at a convenience store. And going back, Matt, to what you said is one of the things that we can do now with radio, because the creative is quick and easy to do, because it's all text to voice from AI, is we can start experimenting with the the audio in the morning is different than at noon, different than the afternoon, and different than at 10 p.m. at night, until we figure out what is the right message to sell that energy drink to all those very different audiences with very different need states.
Yeah, it's very, and that kind of goes back to the how of it all, right? We thinking more about the ways that in which you can break through. It's not just the same playbook over and over again. One of the cool things I like that I think that we have the ability to do is, again, on that how, is the real-time component, right? So especially a convenience store, if there's a snowstorm, for example, coming, right? That if you're going with your traditional kind of ad planning, it's very hard for a brand to plan for that or accommodate for that. So with this platform, you can create an ad very quickly or have one in the can waiting and say, okay, there's a blizzard that's affecting these 120 stores, and in real time effectively be able to just capitalize on that. Or if it's a cultural thing or whatever it is. So again, it goes into that creative, into the how, which is ultimately, for the most part, going to drive performance more than the channel itself. It's the ability to be able to do things differently, smarter, and more efficiently.
We don't talk about contextual targeting nearly enough. We've spent so many years as a digital ad industry talking about personalization. I need to know every little bit of data about you to target some ads slightly better. I look for what the big variables are that determine what people do, and the big variables are the context in which they're in. I'm just 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the most important one. Any store, contextual factors should be a key piece of the equation, but especially in convenience.
And you touched on the personalization, and that was really obviously started out of digital. Why, and I know Andrew, and we've had many conversations about this, but why do we think in-store is just now getting to see people are beginning to come on board the overall market? What's held it back so far, and where do we see it playing out? Andrew, this is right in your...
It's organizational from both the brand and retailer side. It's refreshing to look at other parts of the world that aren't so entrenched in these organizational dynamics, because I think of Tesco as an example. Not only were they able to introduce in-store screens, but they went right to the digital, to the end cap, which I would think from an organizational conflict standpoint here in the US, that would be one of the hardest places to introduce digital signage. I think that's the biggest impediment, is organizational. Then there's obviously, I always say CX and CapEx. One, there's been an overriding concern that it will affect the CX. I think that's probably just about a non-factor in convenience. You expect convenience to be bright, engaging. And then the CapEx standpoint, that's always an issue. I know for audio, that's one of the huge benefits of audio and why audio is moving into stores much more quickly, because you don't have those CapEx concerns. But even still beyond that, I think screens are maybe not as cost prohibitive as they once were.
And partly it's also, I think it has to do with retail media started with very large retailers first. So if you want to make in-store media successful for a store that's the size of 2 football fields, as you say, the CapEx is massive. The installation is hard, and then the tracking, what do you show where? It's a massive enterprise, right? For us, audio is what we use in the store, right? If you tried audio in a store the size of 2 football fields, it would not have the same impact that audio has inside a convenience store, right? So you need to adapt the channel to the store and the context and the mission.
In-store measurement also is not solved yet.
We've solved it.
Well,
We got it.
I think this is a big piece of it, because I'm a big believer you don't let the perfect be the enemy of good in measurement, but it's a big assumption for most digital screens in a grocery store that somebody actually saw that screen. The likelihood that they passed by any individual screen may only be like 30%. It's a pretty reasonable assumption that a screen in a convenience store has been seen. It's a fair assumption that impression when somebody's in the store has been heard, or at least meets the same opportunity to see standard that has traditionally been used in media measurement. I think that if you can't be perfect in measurement, being very close to perfect is pretty good.
Yeah, there's this notion of a discounted CPM, which, you're talking about how many people in the grocery store and the mass merchant actually walk through the screen that was in the laundry aisle? I don't know. In the convenience store, pretty much everybody walks through where the screens are, so there is a discounted CPM to the screens depending on the context where they are. For radio, there's no discounted CPM because, as I said before, people drive to the store, they're not wearing headphones. When they come in, everybody's listening to those ads.
And one of the, I wouldn't call it a misconception because now it's been solved, but one of the kind of hurdles to date is I used to buy in-store audio all the time 10, 15 years ago when I was on the brand side, and I'm like, can anyone even hear this? Is it reaching the right people? Is it clear? And one of the interesting things that we've collectively been able to do is having those sensors that adjust the volume based on the noise in the store. If the store is really loud, right, it's going to be hard. It's just naturally, obviously harder to hear. And certainly if there's something where the volume's too soft, it's going to be hard to hear. And there's, I think, a little bit of uncertainty from brands historically of we don't actually know if these things are being played. We don't actually know if they're being heard. And that's one of the things that has been solved for. So you're the guarantee of play, right? Proof of play and the how and the effectiveness is.
I can talk to the technicalities of that from a platform perspective because that is a solved problem, particularly in 7-Eleven. We have a product called AVA, Autonomous Volume Adjustment, which is a decibel reader. It tracks those ambient noise levels, and then it does dynamically adjust the volume of each speaker, because if you can't hear the audio, then it's definitely not having any impact. And particularly when you're in a fast-paced environment, the fluctuations of people coming in and out of the store can be very rapid. So when there's a lot of people in the stores and lunchtime might hit and then it's packed, if the audio is not adjusting, then you're not going to have any impact. Similarly, like at night, you don't want the volume too loud because it's very quiet. And then you're going to be bugging staff, you're going to be giving people a bad experience by drilling into them. And this is why we use IP-based speakers. So Mario's fully deployed PoE speakers right the way through his network because they're internet enabled. They're connected to the internet, so we know exactly what they're doing. But more importantly, every ad plays time and date stamped with the volume recorded. And because it's the media player, the amplifier and the speaker all in one unit, we know definitively that ad got played into that space at that volume at that day.
And with the loyalty data, we know who was at the store at that point at that time, and that's how we can close the loop.
Yep.
That's what we're saying, it's solved.
Yeah, that's great. It's exciting. So we have a couple minutes left. I wanted to leave it with thinking ahead. We've talked a lot about the past and the present, but where do we think retail media specifically within the convenience channel, if we fast forward 3 to 5 years, certainly with AI and all of these new capabilities, and even organizational evolution, where do we see this going in the next? What does it look like in the next 3 to 5 years when you're thinking about it from an offering standpoint for brands? What will be different?
It's Yogi Berra said it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. But of course, there's going to be a lot more penetration of it. But two things that I think are going to be, we're going to have a lot more non-endemics investing in retail media in the convenience store because customers can be influenced, maybe not necessarily for a purchase there, but later on. So for example, we sell shampoo, detergent, windshield wiper fluid, right? Right now, we're not focusing on those manufacturers, but in a couple of years, I think that'll change. The other one is we play music between the ads or ads between the music. I think there is a place also for when you go into a convenience store, you are not in control of what music you listen to, right? I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Let's say that there's a company that is going to put on a concert for pick your favorite 80s boys band in your local city.
New Kids on the Block.
Suddenly, New Kids on the Block. And suddenly you start going into 7-Eleven. Solid pick. Start going to 7-Eleven, and a couple of months before the concert, hey, there's a lot of New Kids on the Block played in the in-store radio. And that may drive tickets up. So what I'm trying to say, it may not only be the products we sell in the store, but it will have a much, much wider influence because of the frequency with which customers visit the convenience store.
Great. Andrew, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, when I look to the future, I think about the fact that the market's going to be dictated by the brands and their willingness to spend. So you got to start there. And what I hear with brands with respect to in-store retail media broadly is they need scale, they need measurement, and I think that for C-stores, one of the things that I would lean into, in the near term at least, is better measurement. We can actually give you a much clearer picture of your incremental return on ad spend that you're not going to be able to get from other channels. So maybe that helps facilitate the investment. Then the next box that needs to be checked is scale. And that's where individual C-stores can struggle, right? 7-Eleven is truly the exception here, which is why I think ultimately the rest of the market has to look towards aggregation. So the article I wrote was convenience as a media channel. It's really as a collective media channel. It's truly national. It has incredible scale. And if it can check the boxes on measurement, and ask any CPG, by the way, they will tell you why they like convenience. It's the margins, it's the incremental purchase. So they don't need a lot of convincing there. They just need to meet those base level criteria that makes it easy enough to invest. Maybe this is what will ultimately serve as the springboard to larger investments in store retail media.
I think, from my point of view, I think it's more of the near term. I definitely agree. We've got to get everyone on the same page from a measurement point of view. Mario's definitely right. We've gone a very long way to solve this in a very data-driven and standardised way. That as long as we bring the CPGs on that journey and get them comfortable and get them to understand the calculations that we are running, it'll be highly successful. The other thing that I'm very excited by is the actual development of the creative side, for the brands themselves. The kind of learnings that 7-Eleven's undertaking at the minute with products like Lucy, who's generating the ad content based on attributions. Is it male? Is it female? Is it happy? Is it excited? And then the underlying elements of, is there price? Is there location? Is there promotion? And building in all the variations into those scripts that get distributed across the whole network. Because all those inputs are now digitally assigned through an intelligence layer, they actually all become measurement elements on the back end as well. So the understanding, as we really start to scale this up from a brand perspective, we're going to know in a very detailed way how to position it, under what context, in what shopper journey, under what mission at any given time of the day. And I think that is going to be a huge unlock over the next couple of years as we go through that journey. But I think the brands themselves are going to love to come and speak to the Gulp media guys about how does my product resonate with these audiences and when. And I don't think that kind of learning has actually been undertaken in a physical environment with such rich data assets as well. And I think that's going to be a very powerful component of our next journey.
Hey, one last thought, because I know that you and I have talked about this. We definitely want to test this, and I'm pretty sure it's going to work if we start recording the ads with the local accents. Southern drawl in Texas, maybe a Cuban accent in Miami, a Boston accent over there. I'm pretty sure that will give us better results as well.
That's great. On that note, we'll stop here. But thank you, everybody. This was great. I think we covered all sorts of bases, and I think there was a collective, industry realization of how ripe C-Store is as an ad channel, but also even the last 5 minutes here of just how we've just scratched the surface of what could be.
Can I leave this with a final shout out? I've got to say, I love the name Gulp Media Network and the Brain Freeze Collective. It sounds like a really cool band. Whoever named that deserves some sort of a prize or bonus.
And you have special
I'm partial
connection.
to 7-Eleven because it is my birthday.
Hey, thank you for making it to the end of the podcast. If you haven't already subscribed to The Middlemen, the easiest way to find us is to go to LinkedIn, search for The Middlemen Podcast, and follow us, because in all of our posts, we will share links to the episodes on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And we'd love for you to rate us on any of those services if you're so inclined. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time.